to the iCabby Marketplace Spotlight. I'm joined by Neil from Pioneer. Neil, you're very welcome to the iCabby Marketplace, and it's great to see you here today. Let's talk about Pioneer. I know you guys have been around for a long, long time, but you're kind of new to the taxi industry. So can you give us a bit of your backstory and how you've ended up here with us?
Sure. So yeah, you're quite right. Pioneer, better known as a consumer brand, very much initially involved in speakers, TVs, that type of stuff. From that, we've evolved very much into the OEM aftermarket place, where we've been producing head units, car audio systems, and so on. One of the things that people don't know about Pioneer is that we've been very present in the telematics marketplace as well, particularly in Japan, where we have existing sort of relationships with insurers, with OEM partners and so on, to develop safety-related telematics services.
What do you mean when you talk about telematics? Can you break that down a little bit for us?
Okay, so telematics for us involves three different factors. It involves a unit or a device within the vehicle, maybe even just a smartphone within the vehicle, that's collecting data around driving behavioral data, acceleration, sharp deceleration, cornering activity and so on, and is relaying that through the cloud to a central platform and so on. So we put those constituents in place and deliver a service for insurance companies, drivers, taxi service companies and so on.
Well, when you start describing it in that way, I can certainly see why it would be relevant to the taxi industry. So what are you offering on the iCabby Marketplace?
Okay, so yeah, most people see telematics as a black box device that goes in a vehicle, particularly for sort of younger drivers to see how they're driving and so on. We can take that one stage further. That's very much looking at a historic view of how a driver has driven.
Are you spies?
No, we're not spies.
Okay. Okay.
But now, what you can do through sort of telematics is you can actually move that into a real-time scenario. So you're not just looking at what happens post-trip, but you're able to do things in real time that will help the driver to drive more safely. So you're changing that agenda from a spy in the cab type of situation into one where you can actually assist the driver as he's driving, and you can also make that journey safer for both driver and passenger.
So I got a taxi here today, and just as we were pulling up, it said, warning, speed camera. Do you guys offer that kind of thing as well?
And more. So yes, but what we do is we offer two things through the dashcam device that we have in terms of forward-facing driver assistance. We offer the sort of things that you're saying through what we call map-based ADAS, which is looking at the driver's context on the map and saying, okay, in 50 meters time, that driver is going to come to a pedestrian crossing or a traffic light or whatever. And we will, if the driver's driving is inappropriate to that potential hazard, then we will send an alert to the driver to say, maybe you ought to think about slowing down and so on. We will anticipate the risk associated with that particular obstruction or road hazard or whatever. But we also do the same with the camera device as well. The camera can identify potential blind spots, maybe out of a driver's vision. You can see a pedestrian stepping onto the road, for example, and it can warn the driver as well that there's a potential hazard there.
Okay, so hugely valuable in terms of safety. You're talking about a forward-facing dash cam. Do you have an inward-facing dash cam? Does that help drivers stay safe in their cars too?
Yeah, absolutely. In a number of ways. So we have a reverse-facing dash cam that can identify, first of all, whether a driver is fatigued, for example, whether a driver is perhaps distracted by the passenger or by a phone or something like that. It looks at eye movement, it looks at head nodding, and it will provide an alert either to the driver or indeed to the operator, to the taxi operator, if that frequency of risk, if you like, becomes a lot more pronounced.
Everyone's favourite subject, GDPR. You guys must have to be very compliant if you're putting cameras back facing driver and passenger.
Yeah, very much so. We operate on a European basis. So in some of the more GDPR aware countries, if that's the right way of putting it, but some of those countries where GDPR is a much more sensitive topic, like France and Germany and so on, we've had to be very, very careful and compliant with the way we've rolled out service, and that's very important to us.
In terms of the value that you're offering to iCabby customers and potential fleet owners and managers who are looking at bringing your system on board, what are the key benefits that they can derive from the data that you're plugging back into them? Like, what are the big insights that they're looking for with your data?
Okay, so let me mention 3 or 4 things. Firstly, at the end of a trip, we can not only identify, perhaps what's happened whilst the driver has been driving, we can also identify whether or not there were alerts that were provided to that driver based on the driving style that he or she experienced. We can also identify whether a driver is in an accident as well. So, what's important is to be able to identify if a vehicle has been in an incident or indeed been in an accident, and to be able to report that in real time to the control centre and allow the driver perhaps to communicate with the control centre to escalate any remedial action that's necessary and so on.
Okay, so it's got a lot to offer. Can we talk a little bit about your pricing model? How does it work?
It works in 2 ways. First of all, you've got a price for the device itself, for the dashcam itself, and then a service-based price that looks after all of the the accident prevention activity, the reporting on accident data and the like.
So presumably the more cars you have on board, the lower the unit price per car?
Of course, yeah. So there'll be a volume-based discount depending on the quantity of cameras that you want to deploy.
And if you want to find out more, you can read through Neil's iCabby Marketplace page. But to end, Neil, because we're clearly standing in front of a superhero structure here, so it would be rude not to ask, who is your favourite superhero and why?
I should come up with superhero that could sort of alert an accident before it's happened, because that's what we do. But I guess it's probably going back to my childhood and saying somebody like Batman or whatever, because they've got loads of devices and I'm a bit of a gadget man anyway. So.
Well, you're a gadget man who's bringing something brilliant to the taxi industry, so thank you for sharing that with us today. And for anybody interested, you can just check out the page here on the iCabby Marketplace. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Sinead.